Oh yeah, and that was a big part of the reason that I wanted to jump into the whole traveling full-time thing, because traveling is so good for my mental illness. I touched on this earlier.
Mm.
Being able to escape reality sometimes is such a good feeling. And it's so good for my mental health to be able to wake up in a new location, whenever I want. If I want to wake up in the mountains, or I want to wake up at the beach, or on a pond, or in the woods, wherever I want to wake up, I have the capability of waking up and looking out on this beautiful world that we live in.
Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Right now, I'm taking the podcast on the road traveling with me. So tune in every week for short-form episodes detailing all my travels alongside my Monday guest episode. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Welcome to this week's episode, where I'm joined by Tyler Wittkofsky, an avid traveller, full-time RVer, author, content creator, blogger, podcaster, and a marketing and communications expert. Tyler is a creative force, having released his own novels such as Not Alone, The Seeds of Love, Sunflower Kisses Book 1, and a poetry collection, Coffee, Alcohol and Heartbreak. 3 interesting bits there. Tyler has also a blog called Adventure with Coffee. We're going to talk about that today, that he runs with his partner Grace. He also co-hosts the Cook the Books podcast and runs his own publishing company, Tea with Coffee, interestingly. We will touch on some of those today, and obviously some travel stories and anecdotes. Tyler, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
James, I'm great. Glad to be here. Excited to dive into the conversation and, just enjoy a cup of coffee with you.
I tell you what, dude, I've never really researched someone who's got so many keywords for me in your stuff. Tea, coffee, travel, adventure. I'm like, where the hell do I start? Cook. I love cooking. Books. I'm like, oh, you got all the right words. I'm loving it.
Right. Buzzwords. Got to throw them in there. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, that's me. Tell me about it. So where are you right now in the world?
I am in a little place called Lake Waccamaw, North Carolina. It is about an hour from the southeastern coast of North Carolina. We've been here probably about 4 months now, but we're getting ready to take off across the United States here in a couple months.
Are you near a place called Norfolk, Virginia?
We're probably about 4 or 5 hours from there.
Okay, quite far. That's where I'm in UK right now, in Norfolk. So the city's called Norwich and the county's called Norfolk. But I think obviously there's a correlation there, I'd imagine, back in the past.
Yes, very, very much. A lot of our history comes from that side of the pond.
Yes, indeed it does. And also for your trip across we're going to get into more details, but I'm keen to know straight away, because I'm really keen. Across the United States, what's your plan?
So we initially we were going to go through South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and then up to Mississippi. But our dog Belle, who is one of our travel companions for the Adventure with Coffee blog, she tore her second ACL this year, so she has to get surgery now. So that delayed our trip. So we're going to skip all the southern states, go straight to Mississippi. And then go through Oklahoma and into Colorado for a month in March to spend my birthday in Colorado with some of my friends, and just hang out in a different environment, because I'm from the beach and,
Okay.
Colorado is mountains. So I'm a big mountain person, and I feel like that's how it is with everybody who's from the beach. They love the mountains, and everybody who's from the mountains loves the beach. So it's a paradox.
They're both great. You can't argue with either, really. Colorado, in my mind, instantly think the Rockies, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Looks a great state. Unfortunately, never been, but everyone from the States tells me you got to go there. So it's on my list.
Yeah, I'll be sure to let you know how it is whenever we go in March.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I'd like to start with the backstory to my travelers on my podcast to see where maybe travel come into their life. So where did you initially grow up? And also, was there any early memories of travel within your family history, or even you as kids going to school? Like, was anything that kind of got the wanderlust going?
Yeah, so I am originally from a place called Leland, North Carolina. It's about 15 minutes from the beach, again, southeastern coast of North Carolina. I lived there my entire life. My family's been there for hundreds of years. It's very long family history there. We used to, whenever I was younger, we used to travel up to the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee and Virginia a lot. I think that's where my love for the mountains came into
Mm,
play. Just being able to escape reality. My childhood wasn't exactly the best. I had, great mom and grandparents and, was really taken care of, but had some trauma that, really held me back. And being able to get away from the world that was so reminiscent of these bad things that were happening to me was such a great experience. And whenever my wife and I got together back in 2015, we actually started traveling, once a year. We would go to a different state for our anniversary, our dating anniversary, and later our wedding anniversary after we got married in 2020. And we just kind of fell in love with traveling together. It was just such a good, whimsical experience being able to escape the everyday, mundane life. Just the waking up to the same place every single day.
honestly, dude, I hear that so much. It's a tough one, like because a lot of people really struggle with that, and I'm the same. Like, I really struggle with the staying in one place, even one job, the same actual little place and a big place. Like you just see that day in, day out. It is a struggle, and
Mhm.
I'm forever trying to work out what the best route to go down is. But yeah, you're totally right. You just need that little bit of a escape. Yeah, which is quite a harsh word because people would say, "Oh, you're escaping." Like it sounds quite grand, doesn't it? Quite extreme, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Maybe it is a little extreme, but that's how I like to live my life, and
Mm,
and being able to do those things. We lost my brother-in-law back in 2020, a couple months after my wedding, and it was something that was very hard for both me and my wife to come through because he lived his life to such this new level of enjoyment. He just
mm.
wanted to explore life and have fun. And after he passed, I was like, you know what? I was working corporate jobs and was stuck in this 9 to 5 cycle every day, working 40 hours a week, trying to just make ends meet. And I got tired of that. And I was like, I'm gonna do my own thing. And that's when I started doing some remote work. And that's when the whole idea of traveling came about. We kind of wanted to just explore this world and be able to escape everything that was holding us back because it was such a um, something that held us back. It's escaping something that is bad for you in a sense. Not necessarily where we were at, but just that position in our life.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are in that position. 20 years into a career, they probably have a mortgage, and yeah, I talk about this a lot. Lots of responsibilities, and probably feel like there's no way out. I find it amazing that people can stick out a career or a job, like a corporate job, like you said, for 10, 20, 30 years just because they've got to pay the mortgage. It's amazing to get through the day because I think most of them don't even like the job or even not really interested in it. Or
Yeah,
even if they do like it, they're kind of tied with the got to be there at 9 a.m., got to finish at 5 p.m., same location, do what your boss tells you, that sort of thing. It's a real hardcore lifestyle, but I think everyone just accepts it, even though deep down they
yeah,
probably would like to change it.
yeah. And that's where the people like you and I come in, where we break the norm, break the
Mm,
mold, and show people that you can do this. It takes a little bit of effort, takes a little bit of
yeah.
dedication, a little bit of planning, but at the end of the day, anybody can really do it if they've got a house. You know, it's owning an RV and traveling full time is like owning a house. I mean, you still have your unexpected expenses, you still have
Mm.
your car payments and your quote unquote mortgage payment but it's a lot cheaper lifestyle. It's a lot simpler. You're forced to get rid of a lot of things
Hmm.
and cut down on the junk that you own, and that makes you more of a minimalist, which in the long run makes it easier to save money because you really can't buy as much junk just to junk up stuff because number one, your RV has a weight limit, but number two,
Yeah.
you've got to be able to move around in the thing.
Yeah, tell me about it. Ours was so small. I think we done it for 4 months this summer, and we learned a lot of lessons. I think, but minimalist stuff I'm not too bad with. But I think a lot of people would struggle with maybe how big is your rig? Yeah, like you say, can you keep moving? I love being on the road. I think it's great, and having the option not to stay in one place. But I get that is not for most people, or a lot of people. A lot of people would, have their sedentary apartment or condo, right? Which is good as well. I'm not saying it's bad, but it does come at a cost with you got to pay for it, like you said, the mortgage,
Yeah.
and the interest rates go up and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a pretty dire situation sometimes, especially right now. It seems like people are struggling.
Yeah, and I think there's a big wave, especially in the United States. I'm not sure about European countries, but I know in the United States, there's a big wave of people, selling their house and moving into RVs full time and
Mm,
traveling across the country, or even being stationary in an RV full time, just because it is a simpler lifestyle. And there is, with so much remote work capabilities now, it's easier to jump into this lifestyle. And it's a really big movement. We're probably some of the youngest people that we've met
mm,
in this lifestyle, but there's definitely a bigger movement of younger people coming in. We're a part of a lot of different like Facebook groups and social media things, and we see all these young couples that are doing the same thing that we did and got tired of the 9 to 5 grind, corporate living, and decided to sell their house and move into an RV and travel full time. And I think it's great, but it's like you said, it's not for everybody, and that's
mm.
okay.
Yeah.
If we were all doing the same thing, wouldn't that just be a boring life? Because then nobody would be having any kind of adventure with coffee.
Absolutely. And also with your corporate job, how long do you think it was between you maybe thinking, oh, I need to get out of this, to actually doing it? What do you reckon that time frame was?
Let's see, it was about 2 years. It took me about 2 years to try to really get out of there. But the idea came one day, like I said, after my brother-in-law passed away, and I
Mm,
was like, this is not the life for me anymore. And I realized that I wanted to get out and started trying to look for the changes to make. But that time remote work was relatively new
yeah.
and it wasn't exactly accepted by a lot of corporations and a lot of companies. So eventually I went out and did my own thing, started my own companies, and that's whenever I found my happiness because I was working for myself.
Yeah, I do think it's a dream. I think if you can really work on your own terms, and your own boss, and there's no location dependency stuff, you can go anywhere and do it. I think that I can't see any other way of living that's better than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thought about everything, and I can't think of a way that's better than you can decide where you're going to be at any point of the year. And as long as you've got internet, you can work. I think, well, what else do you need? What were you doing in your corporate job out of interest?
I was in marketing communications for local government. I did that for almost 10 years. And I actually faced a lot of burnout from it because,
Mm-hmm.
especially with, the way that the 9 to 5 grind and hustle culture is working now, it's you work yourself till you're burnt out.
Yeah.
You work yourself to the bones, and that's what I was doing. I thought that was normal, thought that's what I was supposed to do,
Mm,
and that burnout that I faced from it, it really caused me to. It took a while for me to recover from that. It was very hard because it was so much pressure, and I was young whenever I first took the job. It was a very high paying job, very prestigious job in our rural county in North Carolina. And I took it at, I think I was 22, 23 years old.
mm-hmm.
And it was a big lifestyle change because I was now front and center in the eyes of the entire public, because I was the spokesperson for this public local government.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I started winning awards and recognitions, and it kind of went to my head because I was like, oh, wow, I'm doing all this great stuff. And I was like, I got to do more. And that's when I realized, like, no matter how many achievements, no matter how many awards, no matter how many goals I achieve, at the end of the day, all I was doing was setting a new one for myself to achieve and
Yeah.
pushing myself harder and further. And it was burning me out because I wasn't taking the time to enjoy my life, to enjoy my family, to enjoy the things I enjoyed doing. I was living for somebody else.
Yeah, it's a time aspect that I can't get over. But yeah, forget the money for a bit, and yeah, the stuff that you got materialistically, like you have, it's just the time you put in. You don't get that back. I think maybe
Mhm.
20s you can take these risks and go for it. But a lot of people don't realize until the late 30s maybe that they've kind of wasted a little bit. At least you've now figured it out. And yeah, I got burnt out as well. That's why I left last year, like, I think a year ago now. But it's just the time you put into a full-time job that's not just the hours specified on the job description. It's the
Yeah.
going home thinking about it all Sunday. You maybe think about the next day, so that kind of rules that day out, and that kind of gives you like a day a week. It's just It's just not enough, is it? To live your life.
No, no, it's not. And, because like you said, you get Saturdays and Sundays off, but really Sundays are spent for getting prepared for Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Friday, you're so burnt out by the end of the day that you don't want to do anything. And
Yeah.
Saturday, you just want to sleep all day. So where does it leave time for you to have fun and do the things that you truly enjoy doing?
It's in the time off that you get. Is it 2 or 3 weeks a year?
If you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah, that's it. And then even some of those weeks, you want to recover and just sleep a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how we got ourselves in the situation.
You've got to use them for holidays or birthdays or emergency situations, sick
Yeah, yeah,
leave. There's
yeah,
so many, they yeah, it sounds nice like, oh yeah, I get 2 or 3 weeks off a year, but then you look at it and it's like, okay, well, what if I'm sick for a week? Then I only get a week off a year. And then what
mm,
if I've got a family emergency or a death in the family? And it's just it's a sad thing, but and a lot of employers nowadays just don't seem to care about their
no,
employees like that. And that's what I'm trying to do with my companies is make I hear so many employers nowadays say, oh, we're like a family. And, like, are you really? Or are you just saying that so that I come and join? With
yeah,
my company, I really do treat my staff like family. I check on them, at every couple of days and just say, hey, how are you doing? Or not even with work, how are things going? You doing okay? Do you need anything? I mean, there have been times where my staff hasn't been able to afford to buy food, and I've door dashed them food
mm,
just so that they had food on the table that night. And being able to that's what being a family is
yeah.
taking care of one another even when you don't have to.
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you. I wouldn't trust any, especially private sector jobs, telling you that they're a family, because ultimately they're there to make money, essentially.
Yeah.
You might get the
Yeah.
odd few are family owned maybe and do have those ethics and stuff, but I wouldn't trust anyone who said that, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to trust nowadays because it's such a watered down term because everybody uses it and nobody means it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're in your job, these companies got now, so Venture with Coffee, the Wittkovsky company, where you starting to maybe start those early whilst in that job to make sure that when you leave your corporate job, the transition is not too harsh and maybe not as much pressure? Or did you just go one day, nope, that's it, I'm doing it and I'm going to make the jump? Like, how did you transition?
So with the Wittkovsky company, I've kind of been doing that on and off for probably about 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
But it was more pro bono work. I was doing it for nonprofits and not for money. It was just more me giving back to the community and helping out these nonprofits that were close to my heart. And so once actually started my LLC back in 2022 and started Tea with Coffee Media, um, it with the Wittkovsky company became more of a reality for me, and those two kind of propelled me to being able to leave that position and
Mm.
live comfortably. Unfortunately, leaving the position was not on my terms. I was let go of for refusing to do some things that were I considered unethical, and
Oh,
some people would even consider illegal. But
wow.
so I was let go for that. So luckily I did have, and it was really a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Whenever it first happened, I was devastated. I was like, I don't know, because I had taken out a lot of money to go into debt for these businesses to start get these businesses off the ground. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make these payments. Don't know how I'm going to make the payment on my mortgage. It was really a struggle for a couple of months and, finally got my feet on the ground. But now here I am. If I would have still been in that position, I never would have been able to travel the United States like
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to do, and never been able to move into an RV and work remotely and live a happy life because I'm 10 times happier today than I was 2 years ago whenever I was working at that job.
Yeah, I think sometimes that situation just pushes you into it. Maybe if you just carry on as normal, it might take another year. Yeah, sometimes they can be blessing in disguise, even at the time if they're a little bit controversial or even upset you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell listeners before we get into Adventure of Coffee, what is the Wittkovsky company? What do you actually do?
So, Wittkovsky Company is a digital marketing and PR company specializing in nonprofits. Currently, we have a couple of contracts with other marketing agencies where we work with higher ed and other nonprofits like that. So I really have always had a passion for nonprofits. Whenever I was working my corporate job, my government job, I served on 4 or 5 different boards of directors for several nonprofits.
Mm,
Currently now I do a lot of work for Right Hive, which is a writing nonprofit. They do a lot of giving back to writers, free resources, free conferences, auctions, things like that.
mhm.
But so that was really the passion behind that because I wanted to be able to give marketing and communication services and PR services to these nonprofits at a price that was affordable for them. I'm not out here to make a killing. I'm not out here to, make $1 million off of this company. I'm out here to pay my bills and have a little bit of drinking money for a nice craft beer or craft coffee,
Yeah,
just being able to have fun on the weekends and do the things that I enjoy. But I don't want to be rich because you can't take it with you. At the end of the day, if something happens to
yeah,
me tomorrow, I want to be able to say if I'm standing at the pearly gates of heaven, I want to be able to say, you know what, I lived my life to the fullest and I'm happy with the way it turned out. And if I can't say that if I'm on my deathbed or if I pass away, if I can't say that, then I haven't lived a life worth living.
yeah. That's a great point. I think people get a bit confused about going full time self employed or having your own company. I think people think you want to earn millions. It's not. I know in my mind how much I need to earn or even
Yeah.
want. They're both wants and needs, really. It's not like millions. It's just enough to, like you say, pay the bills, have a bit left over for travel, and probably a bit invested in the company, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing like extreme, like millions and millions of dollars. I think people get drawn into that with social media. I think you see all these clips about they're taking $8 million in a day and all this crap that comes up.
Yeah.
I think they get kind of taken down the wrong path a little bit, really, without the realism there. Can you tell the listeners also tea with coffee? It's an interesting name that, because obviously you'd never have tea with coffee, would you? Unless you mean food with tea. But yeah, tell us what you do with that company.
So Tea with Coffee Media is a indie publishing company. We publish indie authors who are very small, mainly debut authors. Um, we started because I am a writer and
Yeah.
the rest of my team is a writer. And what we realized was that there was a lot of talented writers out there who were not getting the attention that they
Mm,
deserved because they didn't have the social media following or because they didn't have the money that was required to get their book published. And we wanted to make that difference. So we came in and said, we're going to take care of, we put out our submission process and people submit their books to us. We go through them, and if we accept them and bring them on for a publishing contract, we pay for 100% of the cost. They don't pay a dime. They get a 65-35 split with
oh wow.
65% of royalties going to them.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and we also offer our services to authors who decide to go the self-published route. So we have editing and formatting and book cover design and book marketing services that are available at a very affordable price. Again, we're not here to, make a ton of money. We're here
Mm,
to be able to pay our staff and make enough money to keep the company running. And that's ultimately our end goal. The name Tea with Coffee is actually a play on my name. T for Tyler, and then
yeah.
with coffee sounds like
Ah,
Wittkovsky. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, got it, got
So
it.
that was where that one came from.
Like it.
And so it was just I had that nickname since high school, I think, and it
Yeah,
just kind of stuck. And whenever I started coming up with the idea for this company, I was like, ooh, this would be a fun name. It would catch people's attention. It would get them to ask questions about what started the name. And every podcast I've gone on, everybody's asked, what is the meaning behind the name? So it's
yeah.
working.
Yeah, that's why you're an expert, right?
Yeah.
In like communications and marketing and stuff. It's quite daunting writing a book. The easy part is writing it,
Yes.
I think. The hard bit is that what the hell do you do afterwards? Yeah, you could probably pitch to like big companies, but probably get ignored. But it's great that you're helping like self publishers or even someone like me who would be like, I know a few publishers, but I don't know that area that well, and you can help with
Right.
that. So that's great. You said you were a writer. Has it always been a thing from high school, or is it a late bloomer? Like, where does the creative writing come into it?
So my grandmother was a English high school teacher, and later she was my elementary school principal. So I spent a lot of time with her in the school system. Back then in the 90s, you didn't have tablets and cell
Mm,
phones and things like that to play with. So all you had was your imagination and the outdoors or pen and paper. And I chose to go the route of pen and paper and would write stories for my grandmother and leave them on her desk. But as life goes on and high school and college come at you with writing technical paper after technical paper after technical paper, I kind of got burnt out of writing and took a break from it
mm,
until I moved back in with my grandmother in 2019 while we were waiting on our house to be built. And she asked me one day, she says, "Are you still writing?" And I told her, I was like, "No." I explained to her, I was like, I've been so stuck on writing for work and for college and for high school, it just kind of burnt me out. She asked me to write her a story one day. So
mm.
that's where the idea for Not Alone, my first novella, came from. It was inspired by her asking me to write a story. And from
Oh,
there, I kind of got that revitalized love for writing and started writing again. And the words just flow naturally again. And it feels so good. It's one of my biggest releases. Some people are like, "Oh, what are your hobbies?" And I'm like, my hobbies are what I do for my job,
mm.
writing and blogging and podcasting. That's my hobbies. I don't even consider those jobs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you get into that space of having hobbies that make money,
Hmm.
as long as you don't burn yourself out, I think, well, again, that's another dream scenario. I mean, what else can you ask for? I think writing a book as a like a project for me, this is obviously personal to a lot of people. It's just one of those things. If I can achieve that once, I don't care if it sells one copy. If it's just published or it's like out there in a shop somewhere where people could buy it, I think that's like writing an album as well. Like, I love to write an album like musically. Like those things are
Hmm.
just like if you just get them done and you can do it, and it's like truly what you want to do, they're just great achievements, I think. So that's why I've got this book in my mind because I've got a few ideas for next year. But I appreciate that it takes a lot of time because writing a book is quite lengthy. You've got to write the stuff, you've got to probably do it every day, and all the stuff that comes afterwards. So yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. Yeah, congrats on
Yes.
get back into writing. That's an amazing achievement.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so thankful to my grandma for, really inspiring me to get back into it because it has been such a huge turning point in my life. Being able to write again
Mm.
has been so good for my mental health.
Yeah, I did journal this year actually on my traveling, which is the first time I've done it. Even though I wasn't great at keeping up with it because it is, I was trying to do it every day. I've done okay. Yeah, it's been good. It's been nice to note down and then talk about it on the podcast. It's quite cool. I think the book might come out of that or something. So there you go.
Nice.
So you are full-time RVers. What made you decide to go the RV route and maybe not, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, you can quit your corporate job or whatever and do your own thing. But why then make the leap to going on an RV instead of just buying or keeping in your mortgage in your house? Like, where was the thinking there?
So like I said, we had been in Leland, North Carolina for my entire life. And what we had realized was that we were staying for people who did not have our best interest in mind.
Mm,
And once we realized that, we decided that it was best for us to do what was best for us. And that was to travel full time. We had loved traveling for so much of our relationship that we wanted to continue to do that, but do it at a bigger scale. It actually, I had been thinking about it for a few months. We bought an RV because we did love traveling so much, and we decided we would save money on airfare and
hmm
Airbnbs and hotels and all that good stuff, and use that as our travel source. And about 2 or 3 months after we had bought it, I just kind of it had been on my mind that I wanted to move into this thing full time, and it sounded crazy. And I was like, this is just a pipe dream. And then we had some situation happen, some personal situations, and me and my wife talked about it. And I was like, look, hear me out. Let's move into the RV full time. She said, no, you're crazy. We're not doing that. We have a house. And I said, no, no, no. Hear me out. Give me some time. Just think about it. So she thought about it for about a week, and I would talk to her every day and talk to her about the cool things that we could do and all the fun stuff that would happen and how it would work logistically. And she came around. She was like, you know what? Let's do it. So we decided to sell our house, cut all ties with our hometown and just be people that were on the road full time, that nomads that didn't have a home, yet. And if we find a place someday that we love being so much that we want to settle down at, then maybe we will. But for now, it's all about that travel life.
So did you fully disconnect from the house? Did you rent it out or sell it and then literally move everything or get rid of stuff, then move stuff into your RV? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so we decided to sell our house. Let's see, I think it was um February or March of 2023. We decided to
Okay.
sell our
Yeah.
house, put
Yeah.
it on the market. It was sold within a week
Mhm.
of it being on the market. We sold most of our stuff, moved some of it into storage, moved the some of it into the RV, and went our separate ways and left the house, left the land. It was hard to do because the land, we were right behind my mom's house, so we
Mm.
could easily walk to my mom's house and my grandma's house, and so it was a little difficult to leave them behind. But that was part of our reason for staying in Lake Walkmall, for at least the first 6 months of our RV life, was to let them kind of adjust to us being gone and away for a little bit longer before we head out across our first official trip.
Wow. And how was the transition?
It was pretty tough at first because it
Yeah.
is a smaller place.
Mm.
We had to get used to some things, like the bathroom and the shower. That has been our biggest adjustment, and just figuring out where things go and what things we need versus what things we don't need. It's definitely a smaller lifestyle, a minimalist lifestyle, because we did have a nice 3 bedroom, 2 bath house on
Yeah.
an acre of land. So we had a lot of space, and we've got well, we had 2 dogs, and now we've got three. We actually just got a third dog yesterday. So
Wow.
we have, yeah, it was our brother-in-law, my late brother-in-law's dog. His owners had some issues and they couldn't keep him anymore, so we offered to take him in. But it was one of those things where we were like, he's an older dog, he's a 10-year-old American bully, and we were like, let's bring him across the United States with us for his last hurrah.
Wow. And what are some of the lessons do you think? I know you mentioned some there with the bathroom. Like, is there like even some stuff that you own that you just got rid of because you don't need it? Is there things you actually purchased because you actually needed them for your RV? Like, has there been those sort of experiences with like just living in the RV?
Oh yeah, we've definitely, even to this day, we're still getting rid of stuff from our storage unit, selling
Mm.
stuff, and um just giving it away to friends and family who need stuff, because we've decided we're going to give this at least a year, travel across the United States, and if we hate
Yeah.
it, then we'll figure something out. But
Mm.
if we love it, then we're in good position. But we just figured go for it. Um, but yeah, it's been a fun journey. That is for sure. I think some of the biggest lessons, some of the biggest things we've had to get are things that for like essentials for RVs, like the sewer hose, and
Yeah.
we use poopery for our toilet because it
Yeah.
is such a small space. So you've got to keep it, you got to keep that smell confined. And um, we also, water pressure regulators are huge, and surge
Yeah.
protectors. So we've had to definitely invest into getting what we needed to get set up for the RV. But it's that is another thing. Like, you've got to account for, like I said, what you need for the
Mm.
RV versus what you want for the RV.
Yes. Key. Key. Absolutely. I think we even learned that on our little trip, even though our it's not really an RV, it's like a little mini converted camper van to Toyota Sienna, just like a people carrier.
Nice.
Um, Gutted out the back of a bed. It's got no room. But yeah, you do learn in the summer. Actually, is quite an interesting one because I thought, yeah, we're getting hot in this van. It's not a modern van;
Yeah.
it's an old one. Even those sort of things. I've got like some quick fire sort of RV questions. Really, what's the
Okay.
size? What's the size of your rig that you're living in?
31 foot.
And do you have a car attached to it so you can drive off and do other stuff?
Yes, we do. We have a Jeep Rubicon.
Okay. And how do you know where you're going to stay in terms of the campsites?
So we use a app called RV Life,
Yeah.
and it allows us to track our trip across the United States. So we go through, look at, we know what states we want to go to, how long we want to stay there. So we look at the campgrounds, look at the attractions around there, and then plot it, call the campgrounds, book our spots, and RV Life makes it so easy.
Yeah. I find it just literally go on the app, you pay your fee for how long you want to stay, and that's it. You just turn up. It doesn't
Hmm.
get any simpler than that. I also found US not too bad for like state parks are quite well priced. That I
Yes,
found privates can be expensive, but yeah, what's the average cost do you think a week that you spend on camp fees?
probably between $200 and $300.
Yeah, it's probably the same as us. Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever boondock? Do you ever do like a free couple of nights, or is that maybe on your trip you might think about doing that?
Yeah, so that's actually in our plans. We have a solar panel on our
Ah,
RV. We had that installed when we first bought the RV so that we
yeah,
could do some boondocking
yeah.
and hang out at state parks and stay in the free spots and just
Mm,
use our um, solar energy to power the RV instead of a generator because generators can be loud and noisy. So
yeah.
we have a generator as a backup just in case, but we the solar panels work great so far. So
Yeah, I find that even at rest stops with the truck drivers, they have their generators on. It's quite loud.
yes,
Not ideal when they've got like 10 of them doing it as well. Also, what about internet? Obviously, you would need that for your work. You got Starlink, or how would you sort that
yeah. So we've got four sources of Wi-Fi. We've
out?
got Starlink.
Yeah.
We've got AT&T, an AT&T hotspot, and then my wife has T-Mobile or US Cellular, and I have Verizon Wireless. And
Wow.
both of our phones have a hotspot on it.
Yeah.
Plus, most of your campgrounds have Wi-Fi for
True.
backup. It's not normally the greatest, but the campground that we're staying at now actually has really good Wi-Fi, and
Mm.
we're covered by trees, so our Starlink doesn't work here. So we have to rely on
Ah.
our hotspots and the campground Wi-Fi. But it's gotten us through. I mean, here I am doing a podcast and working out fine.
Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, no worries. Like the campsite behind me is in Harris Beach, Oregon,
Nice.
covered in absolute trees everywhere.
Yes.
So I do wonder how people get their internet because it's just something that people don't know much about. Like Starlink, I just thought Starlink works everywhere. I didn't realize that trees
Yeah.
would be a bit of a hindrance to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was tough at first because we were like, oh no. And luckily, you can pause your Starlink service so you don't have to pay
Okay.
monthly if you're not using it. So we've got it paused. We've had it paused for about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And but luckily it's there are so many different options for Wi-Fi out there nowadays. And the best thing I was talking to somebody the other day who was it was actually a contract interview, and they asked me, they're like, how can I be so sure about your Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi situation with you traveling full time? And
Mm.
I was like, well, let me ask you this. I was like, how many sources of Wi-Fi do you have? And working remotely. And he
Yeah.
said one. I said, well, I've got five.
Yeah, you've got all bases
And
covered.
yeah, I anybody can have Wi-Fi issues working remotely or in an
Yeah.
office. You can
Yeah.
have internet
Absolutely.
issues. And I feel like I'm better equipped for that than most people because I do live this remote lifestyle. So I have to be prepared for whatever comes my way.
Yeah, you're right because I think these companies that are setting up now, these like remote working experiences type companies, where they take probably 10 of like people like us and they put you together in this location and give you a space to work, but also do experiences and food tours and that sort of stuff. I think the reason they pop up is because the internet is such a key component. I think I imagine back in the early days, people just turned up to like any hotel or hostel or whatever internationally and thought, oh, I was work from here. Then realized that the internet is shit. So like,
Yeah.
like companies like, oh, we need to make sure we've got top notch level internet to make sure
Yes.
people can actually work. I think that's the only issue. If you get that sorted, you can go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Any funny stories from your RV lifestyle so far? Anything maybe that kind of surprised you or made you laugh?
So we had an incident where um we were cleaning out our black tank, and which, for those of you who are not familiar with what a black tank is, that is where the waste from the toilet goes. And we forgot to open the black tank. So we had the hose hooked up and we were washing it out. Well, if it has nowhere to go, it's going to go straight up back into the toilet. So I was outside, I had the hose turned on. I'm sitting there waiting for, because we've got a clear cap that goes on the sewer fitting, so I can see whenever the water gets clear, so I know it's
Yeah.
good and clean. And next thing I know, my wife's yelling, "Tyler, stop!" And I'm like, "Oh my God, what is going on?" So I turn the water off and run inside, and she's like, "Are you running the water out there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Did you open the tank?" And I'm like, "Oh no." And I opened the bathroom door, and toilet water up to the top. Luckily, it didn't flow over. It got to the very tippy top of the toilet. And so I was like, oh man. So I went outside, opened the tank, and we slowly let that water out of the toilet. So that was one mistake that I have not made since then.
Yeah. Lesson learned. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think my only equivalent to that this year is that we tried to wild camp in Oman, which is the Middle East, and they don't have any facilities, but you can wild camp. It's not illegal to wild camp or boondock if you like. So you can literally stay anywhere, just take your car or your camper van or your Jeep, pitch a tent, and it's fine. But there's no facilities. So if you've got a Jeep and a tent above you and you've got no way to have a toilet, it is literally as rustic as you've got to go and dig yourself a hole, probably in the forest or by the beach, bit of sand, and just kind of squat. It's just the most earthy thing I think I've done because you're just not used to it. And it's like,
Yeah.
what other choice have you got? And sometimes it's like 30 degrees and you're sweating. It's just not the most ideal situation. But yeah, that's kind of not similar, but like along the same lines of you just got to
Right.
see your own poo and deal with it. And yeah, just something you have to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to adjust.
Okay. We're going to get to adventure with coffee soon. But first, I want to know, have you traveled internationally? This is a patron shout out to Laura from the Swamp Soup Stickers, who has contributed £5 to the podcast on my Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it, and it helps the podcast to keep going in the future. If you're interested, head to the show notes where you'll find a link to my Patreon. The website address is patreon.com/Winging It Travel Podcast. For £5 you will receive some trendy stickers from myself in the post, a shout out on each episode, and also my digital travel planner by email. Thank you for your support.
We have not yet. That is actually on our to-do list for our 10-year anniversary, 10-year wedding anniversary. We're going to travel across to the United Kingdom and Poland, where my family is originally from, Ireland, where her family is originally from, maybe some Asian countries. But yeah, we're going to spend a couple months across seas for our 10-year anniversaries.
Oh, that's great. Are you going to RV any of it in, like, especially Europe?
We haven't decided yet. It all depends on, what life looks like at that point.
Yeah.
We'll probably RV it for a little bit,
Mm.
at least across Europe, and then maybe, we'll see what it goes like.
Yeah, it's pretty well connected. I mean, if you start in the UK, you can get the ferry across the island. So yeah, it's pretty easy to do, and you can drive under the tunnel to France, and then you're in Europe, pretty much mainland Europe. So I think as long as for you, it'd be great because they drive on the same side of the road as you. Yeah, it'd be pretty seamless. It'd be pretty cool to go and see Europe that way. Actually, we kind of think about that. That'd be a pretty amazing trip. It just gets a bit cold, obviously, in the winter, but yeah, if you do that in the summer or whatever, that'd be great. It sounds quite an amazing trip. Poland, oh, I love Poland. I haven't been for years. But whereabouts? Do you know whereabouts your family are from in Poland?
Warsaw.
Oh yeah, the capital. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They're from. That's where our family lineage is back from, Warsaw. But I think we have some lines that go back to Krakow.
Yeah, great city. Yeah,
Yes.
Krakow is like the just middle of Europe, and it's
Yes.
the outdoor culture. So like that classic European square, everyone's having a nice time outside, some beers or some coffee, whatever you got to do. Yeah, it's a great vibe there. Really like it. That sounds great. Well, that's a great trip coming up. That's awesome. Be keen to follow for that. Let's go to adventure with coffee. You must love coffee. So, is there any like
Yes.
favorite coffee that would gig you? Any favorite coffee from a country or any brand that you like tasting coffee of?
Yeah, I love it's called Fresh Roasted Coffee LLC.
Okay.
They are they have so many different flavors. Pumpkin spice is a huge one that my wife loves, but they also have like a blueberry crisp, a
Oh
white
wow.
Russian, creme
Mm.
brulee, tiramisu,
Oh,
um, pecan pie. I mean, there are so many different flavors that they have. It is just amazing. Um, they are probably the best tasting coffee I've had, I would say.
mm. Where are they predominantly based?
I believe they're in the United States, but I think they ship worldwide.
Okay. I have to check those guys out. Yeah, yeah. Okay, awesome. And do you have any favorite areas of the US that you love going for coffee or a city maybe that you just love drinking coffee for a day?
Raleigh, North Carolina has some really good small craft coffee shops.
Yeah.
We've explored Raleigh a few times, and one of our favorite things to do in Raleigh is to hit a brewery and then go to a coffee shop. We've also come across some breweries in West Virginia and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that are both craft breweries and craft coffee shops all in one. So
Wow.
that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Dream scenario. God. Wow.
exactly.
Do me a sandwich and I'm not moving all day, I don't think.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have on your trip coming up any spots around, going west that you'd like, we've got to stop there for a coffee? Anything in the pipeline?
I think I definitely, of course we'll be in Colorado for a month, so
Yeah.
I want to try some good Colorado coffee,
Mm.
local coffee shops. I've got, like I said, friends who live in Colorado, and they talk all the time about some of these coffee shops that are
Okay.
local to them, and they're in Colorado Springs, but they go to Denver a lot too.
Yeah.
So, um, really excited for that. But I think, I'm a big craft beer guy. I love craft coffee too, but my wife is the coffee aficionado.
Okay. You're the beer
She is
guy.
huge. Yeah, I'm the beer guy. But I'm getting more into coffee, especially, now that I've found fresh roasted coffee and I've
Yeah.
found all these different flavors and I've been able to try different things. Really getting into it and trying to learn the flavor profiles and the science behind making coffee and grinding coffee and things like that.
Yeah. It's a real science. I think you
Yeah.
spend years as even learning about it. And then even trying to roast your own coffee is like a different level, like trying to figure out
Yes.
the temperature, the level, trying to get your medium roast. It's a real skill, I think, which people maybe don't appreciate because they go to
Yeah.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Craft beer, though, we always, in Portland, we do check a few out because it's quite close to here. Well, here, I'm in UK, but I live in Vancouver, but that's quite close to Vancouver, like hour flight. And Portland's got great craft beer
Mhm.
companies in the middle of the sort of downtown area. You can go like block to block and go different ones. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm excited to Portland is on our 2025 plans.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah, so I'm really excited to go over to Portland.
awesome. Okay, and tell the listeners Adventure with Coffee. What do you blog about, and what is the idea behind the brand?
Yeah, so Adventure with Coffee, we blog about traveling, RV tips and tricks, different destinations, food places, craft beer reviews, craft coffee reviews, food reviews. We do all kinds of travel related blogs. But right now we're mainly doing like RV tips and tricks and the science behind craft beer and craft coffee, things like that. Once we start traveling more in 2024, we're going to be doing our campsite reviews and
Ah,
um, brewery reviews, coffee shop reviews, all this kind of stuff, letting people, because we want it to connect with our family and friends who wanted to follow our journey, but also give
mm-hmm.
other people a chance to, kind of experience the wanderlust of traveling full time and see these different places across the United States without actually having to leave their own house. And so that way they can say, oh, okay, well, Adventure with Coffee, Tyler and Gracie said that this place in this state was really good. So whenever I go there, I'm going to try out their pizza or their beer or their coffee, whatever it may be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had the same idea with mine's called the Trendy Coffee Podcast because I think trendy is very personal. Like what you might think is trendy is maybe not what I think is trendy, or it could be the same. But yeah, I was like, oh well, if I go to one place around the world and it's a 5 minute video about a coffee shop that does great coffee, looks great, and if you happen to travel there, oh yeah, James said, oh, but this place is good for coffee, right? It's exactly the same idea. I think that there's space for this market because there's so many coffee shops, but the
Yes.
US is absolutely heaving with them. In any part of the country, like I love the New England area because it's got so many coffee shops up there.
Oh, yes.
Northern California's got their own coffee shops going on. Like, there's so many different areas you could concentrate on. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Do you think you will venture out to like loads more states to kind of search out for those like unique craft beer or coffee companies? Do you think just trying to maybe get more recommendations out there?
Yeah, we're gonna try to hit all 50 states by the time we
Mm,
hit 50. Hopefully, really, we're probably gonna hit all 50 states within the next 5 years if we keep on the path
yeah,
that we're planning. But yeah, so we're really gonna keep on trying to hit all these different states and cities and just really get down to the nitty gritty. Once we hit all 50 states, if we're still loving traveling, we'll go through and hit different cities that we haven't been to, different parts of the
yeah.
state, so that we can, try different cultures and different styles of food and coffee and craft beer and just really experience the melting pot.
Yeah, you could go really granular, right? You can do the state and then the counties, then the cities, and then even the areas in the cities. Like, that'd be really cool. That's awesome. And Grace helps you run the blog.
Yes, she does all the proofreading for me. She takes most of the pictures. Um, I do most of the writing, but it's a team effort for sure. We are in this together.
Okay, and you mentioned your 2024 adventure in February. Have you got any more afterwards, or is it to see how it goes with Denver and Colorado and stuff, and then kind of work out what's next? Or do you know where you're going after that?
Yeah, we've actually got our whole 2024 and 2025 planned out
Oh wow.
already. Yeah, yeah. So we've got about half of the 2024 trip booked. We don't have any of 2025 booked yet, but most
Hmm.
campgrounds aren't booking out that far yet.
Yeah,
Um, so for 2024, like I said, we're going to start off in Mississippi, and then we're going to make our way to Arkansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and back to North Carolina.
wow. So about what, 20 states ish?
Uh,
It's a decent trip.
Close. Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
awesome. Any potential to go into Canada to step over the border?
That's probably going to be our 2026 trip. Is we're
Okay,
probably going to
yeah,
spend most of 2026 traveling Canada.
yeah. There's some good coffee spots in Eastern Canada. That's great. And then 2025, what are you thinking off the top of your head?
Let's see. We're going to start in Florida. We're going to go
Yeah,
to Walt Disney World, and
yeah,
then we're going to travel to Alabama, Louisiana, Texas for a month, New
nice.
Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California for a month, back to Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, back through Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and then back to North Carolina.
What a trip that is. It's weird because we done our road trip this year, I now know where these states are. So
Yeah.
before even going to US, if I'm honest, in the camper van, I could tell you some obvious states in California. Yeah, I get it. But now because I've been through like South Dakota and it's like, oh yeah, Wyoming's there and you've got Yellowstone there. I sort of now when you're saying that, I'm like, oh yeah, you're going there, up there, down here. Like that's pretty
Yep.
cool. That trip of going along the south, that was part of our trip this year, but we just didn't have time to do it. The sort of like along the Texas and then you sort of go
Hmm.
New Mexico and down the southern part of California, work your way up, or you go east into Nevada. But that is an amazing trip, I think. That's so exciting, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, we're so excited.
There's nothing better just get on the road and seeing those places, and
Yeah,
you're not bound by time. It's on your own time. I'd imagine like you can be a bit more flexible with it, which is again
yeah,
the dream, I think.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. That was our whole goal is for, right now my wife does, she works a full-time job as a college admissions counselor, and our goal is for both of us to be able to just run the blog full time
Mm,
and run our company full time, Tea with Coffee Media and the Wittkovsky company, and just enjoy our lives, be able to work at our own pace, our own schedule, and just be able to go out, have a beer for work, go out, have a
yeah,
beer, write a blog review, and that's our work for the day.
I keep harping back to the time thing. When you realize how much time put into a full time job, you can't do any of that. What you just said, really.
Yeah.
You might touch one or two states if you can get out in your vacation time, but you just realize how much time is
Yeah,
on your career or your job if you're ready to travel. It's a tough one.
absolutely.
Fair play for you to figure it out, because I think a lot of people listening and going, okay, well, Tyler can do it. Let's think about my own situation and what plans I can put in place. You also very openly talk about the mental health aspect of maybe this maybe comes from your previous life, I guess previous life, if you like, in your job, but also now to this new life of RVing, maybe as part of the journey. Why do you think you wanted to maybe put it out there? Is it to help other people, do you think?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I was diagnosed bipolar back in 2015, I believe it
Mm-hmm.
was, and it really felt like a life-changing diagnosis, because I was like, everybody's gonna look at me differently if I start telling people, and I was so ashamed because it's so stigmatized
Mm,
still. And whenever I first wrote my novella, Not Alone, it was all about my experiences with mental illness. And I never expected to publish it because it was just supposed to be for my grandmother.
yeah.
And I started showing it to friends and family, and everybody was like, "You need to publish this. It's such a powerful story." And I got to thinking, I'm like, this is a scary thing because if I publish this story, I'm putting myself out there,
Yeah.
and making myself very vulnerable to a lot of people. And what I realized though was so many people were reaching out to me saying how much the story meant to them, how much they connected with it, how much it made them not feel alone. And that was the most inspiring and powerful thing to me. Once I got that, once I realized that, I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be passionate and talk about my mental health. I want to be open about my mental illness and help other people realize that even though they are mentally ill, they can still be successful. They can overcome those challenges, those obstacles, those hurdles to become an entrepreneur, an award-winning marketing communications professional, a published author, whatever you want to be, you can do it despite what your mental illness tells you you're capable of.
Yeah, I think people really need this sort of stuff right now.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe our generations are starting to realize that the old generation who would, work 40, 50 years in their careers and stuff and put up with it, I don't think it's enough for anyone anymore. I think people
Mm-mm.
see life as a bit more than that. And it's just not going to wash that you can just do 40 hours a week, probably more, and live a life, because how can you?
Yeah.
But maybe that affects their mental health, and maybe it's just a bit of daunting aspect to try and figure that out. And because there's so many responsibilities, isn't there? If you've got kids, or you've got a mortgage, or you've got car payments, or whatever, like there's so much to think about, and it's quite a daunting prospect. But I think they need people like you to talk about it and maybe even give some guidance somewhere. Do you think going on this trip will also help you even further with your mental health, like this whole new journey of RVing and different lifestyle, and maybe seeing different cultures within the states and also international?
Oh yeah. And that was a big part of the reason that I wanted to jump into the whole traveling full-time thing. I wanted to be able to, because traveling is so good for my mental illness. I touched on this earlier.
Mm,
Being able to escape reality sometimes is such a good feeling. And it's so good for my mental health to be able to wake up in a new location, whenever I want. If I want to wake up in the mountains, or I want to wake up at the
mm.
beach or on a pond or in the woods, wherever I want to wake up, I have the capability of waking up and looking out on this beautiful world that we live in.
And that's kind of the purpose of travel, right? I think just to
Yeah,
really seek out
absolutely.
those new things. It could be nature, it could be people, it could be an experience, right? And just kind of get those
Hmm.
under the belt. I think you made a point earlier that about if you died tomorrow, for example, a bit morbid here. Are you happy with what you've done? And I think I said this in the podcast the other day. I think if it happened tomorrow and I sort of later and assess what I've done the last, especially 10 years of travel, like, oh yeah, I've traveled a lot. Like, I've done a lot.
Yeah,
You can always do more. Don't get me wrong, but that comes down to reality and money, I suppose.
right.
But if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I haven't done my dream, that could be writing a book, it could be traveling, it could be anything. I think people need to think about that a bit more seriously because yeah, these are big topics to think about, aren't they?
Yeah, very
Yeah,
much so.
very deep topics. But let's back to travel. How would you define home, do you think now?
Home is, it's going to sound very cliche, but home
Yeah.
is where the heart is. Home to me is with my wife and my dogs. It's not about a
Mm,
physical location, it's about a feeling. Just feeling at ease, feeling at peace. I can be in the car with my dogs and my wife and be at home. I could be at a brewery with my wife and dogs and be at home.
hmm.
To me, it's a feeling, it's not a physical place.
Yeah, I think a lot of people said that actually. I do ask that quite a bit. Yeah, people might get confused with that argument, but I've heard it so many times now this last year or so. It's about who you're with, not really what you're in.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you and your dogs travel to Oregon tomorrow, that's Oregon's home for the day because you're with them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's awesome. Okay, can you tell the listeners about your novels? I'm keen to hear. You've released a few, right? Can you tell them what the names are and what they roughly, high level, sort of talk about?
Yeah, so my first novella was Not Alone. I've mentioned that a couple times. It's about my journey with mental illness. I actually rewrote that and re-released it this year as a full-length novel. So it is now Not Alone, the second edition.
Hmm.
A lot more detail that goes into it. You explore a lot more of the aspects of mental illness in this re-released version. My second published work was Coffee, Alcohol, and Heartbreak, a poetry collection. I actually wrote those poems from 2012 to 2016. So,
Mm,
from before my diagnosis of mental illness to right after I met my wife and kind of came to the conclusion of my that chapter of my mental illness. And then there is The Seeds of Love, Sunflower Kisses, Book One, which was my debut romance novel.
mhm,
And it is about a mentally ill young man who falls in love with this girl who lives in a 4 hours away. So they come into a long distance relationship, and it
mhm,
goes through the struggles that he faces with his mental illness and being in a relationship. It is told from the male's point of view, so it's like a kind of a refreshing look on a love novel or a love
mm.
story. Um, and then let's see, my most recent one was Enamored Echoes Book One Potent. It is a modern day retelling of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. It features Oberon and Titania in modern times as they have been apart for a couple hundred years and now come back together to save the world. I co-wrote that with my best friend and vice president of marketing at Tea with Coffee Media, Kelsey Ann Lovelady.
Mhm.
I've got another book releasing in March of 2024 called The Principal's Principles. It is about the first female principal in a rural county in the southern United States. And it is based off of my grandmother, who was the first female principal in
Ah,
our county. And so she's always wanted to write a story, and this was my way of writing a book for her. It's completely made up story, but the woman is based on the main character is based on my grandmother, and she's just a strong female lead character who just really inspires people. And then I am also currently working on Love and Growth, Sunflower Kisses Book Two. Hopefully, that will be coming out in late 2024.
oh wow, so a lot of projects coming up then. Some books.
Yes.
That's great. Do you have like a particular way of writing? Is it quite structured, or is it like see how you feel the day of doing it? I know this is a very niche question for a lot of people because everyone's different, but how do you write your books?
Yeah, I'm a big plotter. So I like to create spreadsheets and diagrams and things like that that break down the characters, their relationships, what color their hair is, what color their eyes are. skin color, height, weight, all that good stuff. If they've got a pet, what kind of vehicle they drive. I really dive down into what makes the character and who they are, plotting them out for my series. Um, my actually the whenever I first wrote Not Alone as a novella, it was completely pantsed. I had no idea what I was doing. Just went in and started writing. Didn't have any structure at all. But realized that that was not the way to write for me because I'm a very
Mm.
organized person.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Do you think you'll write non-fiction books for your travels? Do you think is that in your mind at the back?
I've thought about it. I've thought about writing nonfiction. I
Yeah.
haven't quite decided, what it would be about yet. But travel is always a good option.
Mm.
I'm thinking maybe once we finish our journey across the United States, maybe a book about that journey,
Yeah.
talking about some of the stories and the people that we've met and just the experiences that we had and the lessons we learned.
Yeah. Very keen to see if you do that because that's basically the base of my book. It's just
Mm,
basically the last 10 years of travel. Very different types of travel from 10 years ago when I was a bit younger to
yeah.
this year. So I think it's a bit of a journey, and a decade's quite a nice time frame. Is it like a decade of travel? And yeah, it's got some ideas. I've got the stories down from 10 years ago in case I forgot them. So they're on e-paper somewhere, but we'll see. Can you tell us about the YouTube that you do? Cook the Books podcast?
Yeah, Cook the Books podcast is a podcast hosted by me and my friend Kelsey Ann Lovelady, who I co-wrote Potent with. Um, we talk about the latest trends in the publishing and writing industry. We host guests from our company and other partners and other independent publishing companies, and just get on there to talk about different things such as we just did an article or just did an episode on mental health on and off the page.
Mm-hmm.
We've done one on editing, and our next episode that's coming out in a couple of weeks is about the Alphabet Mafia, the LGBTQIA plus community. We've
Okay.
got a couple of LGBTQIA plus authors on our um, in our team, and they're going to be joining us on the podcast to talk about what it's like writing that genre,
Mm.
what we can do as a society to better equip writers to write that, how to avoid those stereotypes. So we do cover quite a bit about
Mm.
writing. But yeah, we love doing it because it was just our way to give back to the writing community. And I've always loved podcasting. I've done several different podcasts throughout my career, including the Back Porch Parlay podcast, which was my lifelong friend Matt and I did together for a couple years during COVID. And what we did was we got together and we just debated and showed people that you could have conversations without yelling and screaming at each other.
Yeah.
Because my friend Matt and I, we've been, like I said, we've been friends for about 10, 15 years now, and we've got different opinions on a lot of things. And we like to get together and show that you can have conversations with people without getting angry and still be friends at the end of it. So I just love podcasting because it's a way to connect with people and give people information and show people new points of view.
Yeah, I think those podcasts are starting to come back. So I think people are fed up with polarized arguments, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
politics or war or whatever. I think people are saying, "Oh, where the podcast where people just sit normally with a coffee,
Yeah,
probably, and like, there's no shouting and there's no judgment about, just talk about what you think is the best way to tackle that subject." I definitely seek out those type of podcasts because I find it annoying that there's so much polarization at the minute, which
yes,
is kind of destroying a lot of people, and they get so
yeah.
into it. Yeah, it's a bit of an annoying one. Yeah, great that you're doing podcasts as well. I think you have a good podcast voice, so I think you should definitely do that.
Thank you.
Also, I think in-person podcasts, I'd rather be doing this in person. I think it's a better sort of like, yeah, ambience to it. I think you get the
Yeah.
camera out, you have a coffee, it's a bit more personal. I think it's definitely something I'm going to look into next year. I think that's a better way to go long term, maybe for this podcast, but we'll see. Travel podcast is hard, right? Because a lot of people I talk to about traveling are probably somewhere in the world. It's,
Yeah.
it's, it's
Yeah.
hard to do a travel podcast, and you think, are all the travelers here in Vancouver? No, they're not. Okay, fair enough. Well, bang goes the in-person idea. But maybe I'll try and find a few for this podcast next year.
There you go.
Yeah, there you
Maybe we'll
go.
have to meet up next year.
Yeah, yeah, always down for going into the US. We had an interesting time on our road trip.
There you go.
Loved it. And how do you keep all these creative projects in order? You've got so much going on. Like, what's your, not say secret, but what's your thought process there?
Um, I wish I knew. I I no, I try to. I'm very organized. I have calendars and task lists, sticky notes on my computer, my phone,
Mm.
um, my Google, my Gmail. Yeah, I use a lot of calendars and I rely on my wife a lot. She also, I will send her invites for all of the important things,
Mm.
calendar invites, so that she has it on her calendar so that the chances of both of us forgetting it are a lot less than
Yeah,
one of us forgetting it than me
yeah.
forgetting it. So, always like to have a double, triple check.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to get involved in any of the projects, whether it's a venture with coffee or the Wittkovsky company, or Tea
Yeah.
Coffee? Like, where can people find you?
The best way to find me is by looking up my link tree, which is linktr.ee/Tyler Wittkofsky, or just going to my website, tylerwittkofsky.com. You'll find links to my podcast, all of my companies, all of my blogs. Uh, Anything that you're looking for on me is on one of those two links.
Awesome. I'll put them in show notes so people can just click those for ease, if you like. Okay. I'm going to finish the episode with some quick fire travel questions. These are some of the things you've seen on your travels that you love, or even coming in the future. Maybe in your mind, you think, oh, that'd be good. So I'm going to kick off with it's travel question time. 3 favorite states that you've traveled to.
Ooh, okay. So I loved West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
loved Tennessee, and Massachusetts was surprisingly one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah, we like that. That's nice. Yeah, yeah. I guess Boston is a bit of a cliche place, but
Yeah,
yeah, there's other, there's other parts.
I'm a big Boston Red Sox fan, so that's part of the
Ah,
reason I got to go to Fenway Park, and that was beautiful.
are you a Boston Celtics fan for basketball?
I'm not a big basketball fan.
Fair.
Never really. My grandmother was, which is surprising because my grandmother, who's been such a big influence in my life, was
Yeah.
a basketball player and a basketball
Ah,
coach, and
yeah.
I just could never get into it. I'm
Hmm.
football, baseball, soccer, but
Not
not
basketball.
really basketball. No.
Wow, that's my one American sport I love. Oh wow, interesting. And I've seen the Giants. Is it in San Fran?
Baseball, yeah, San Fran.
Yeah, I've been there. I think I saw Bryce Harper, left-hander.
Mm,
He chucked it over the ground. I'm not a baseball connoisseur, but it's interesting to go to. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, it's good. There's a lot of baseball. Has a lot of stats, real like
yes,
deep down stats about every
a
single
lot of
thing in baseball.
analytics.
Yeah, high.
Yeah.
Okay. What about 3? You might have said this already, but 3 countries that you've not traveled to that you would love to go to next. If tomorrow there's no requirements of money, you can go anywhere in the world. What 3 countries are you going to go to?
Ireland, Poland, Canada.
Okay, Canada's in there. Nice.
Yes. I've always wanted to go. I'm so close to it and I've
Yeah,
never been and I've always wanted to go and I've got so many friends and so many authors who are signed with Tea with Coffee Media who are Canadian that I
yeah.
just want to go and see all of them. I'm like, I need to get over there. You're so close. I can drive to you. It's not like I have to get on a boat or fly.
And it's like same. It's not. It's quite an easy transition.
Yeah,
Like maybe going from US driving over to Mexico might be a bit more of a way, a bit differently.
right.
Okay, that's interesting. What about 3 favorite international cuisines or foods?
Okay. Pasta. I don't care what kind of pasta, any kind
Yeah,
of pasta.
yeah.
Um, Sushi
Mm-hmm.
and ramen.
Ah, ramen, classic. Okay. What about a favorite beach that you've been to?
Because we're not really big beach people, so we don't really
Mm,
go to that many beaches. I think my favorite beach is probably Oak Island, which is in North Carolina.
okay,
But that's again one of the few that I've actually been to, and it's 15 minutes from where I grew up, so I'm a
fair.
little partial.
What about a favorite mountain range or mountain, single mountain, whatever?
Blue Ridge Mountains, yeah,
Okay,
in
nice.
North Carolina, Tennessee area.
What about a favorite walk, hike, or trek that you've done?
Hanging Rock.
Ah, Okay, nice.
Yes.
What about three states that you've not been to that you can't wait to go to next?
Texas,
Hmm.
Colorado, and got two in my mind. I don't know which one I want to choose. I'm gonna go with Oregon.
Oh, Oregon. Yeah, dream. Okay, top three favorite activities that you do on your travels.
Drink beer,
Yeah.
drink coffee, eat food. Sounds good to me.
Okay. If you could pick a country in the world that's not USA and live there for a year, where are you going to plump?
Poland, without a
Okay.
doubt.
Can you speak Polish?
I used to be able to.
Ooh.
I have lost it. I know how to say I love you. Kocham Shi. That's
Okay.
I love you. And then I know how to say God, honor, and fatherland. That's Bog, honor, el Chinois.
Okay.
And I don't know if my southern accent does not mix well with the Polish, so it's probably all kind of butchered. But I actually have a couple Polish tattoos. I have one of Wojtek the bear, which is a World War II bear who was adopted by the Polish army and was granted citizenship by the Polish um, government so that
Hmm.
he could actually be a private. He actually went up to a corporal in the Polish army in World War II. So I've got a tattoo of him and a tattoo of a winged hussar with the words Bog, Honor, Ojinwa underneath it, which means God, honor, and fatherland.
You know what? Polish is such a hard language.
Yes.
Yeah, that
And
is ridiculous.
the funny thing is, whenever I was learning Polish in high school, I actually bought a first grade Polish textbook from Poland, and in there were how to say the words bar and vodka.
Right. So you
I
need.
thought that was very interesting. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a first grade Polish book, but here we are teaching them how to say vodka. Okay.
Maybe it's an easy word.
Yeah.
Get them settled in nicely.
Yeah.
Who knows? I do love the Polish. It's a great country.
Yes,
Okay.
they are.
Is there any like nations, people that you'd love to meet in your mind? Like you still love to have a conversation with a certain group of people from a different country. You know, who would you have a conversation with over a beer?
You know, I wouldn't even say it would be a different country. I would say the natives of the United States,
Oh yeah, yeah,
Native Americans. I think they
yeah.
would. Not that I've never talked to any because I've
Mm,
talked to some, but I've never actually had a chance to sit down and speak to, like an elder
yeah,
of a Native American nation. I think
yeah.
that would be so cool to be able to just sit down and hear about their history and their traditions, and because they do have such a cool um, outlook on life from the things that I've seen and learned and heard.
Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty interesting conversation. Me personally, I won't say awkward, but being from the UK, we've got a lot of questions to answer, like traditionally, right? With that's Canada and USA, not just USA,
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
how those guys have been treated from our ancestors, unfortunately. Um,
exactly.
yeah, it's a real interesting conversation. I'd like to learn more and know how it's kind of been filtered down the generations,
Yes.
and what can we do now to even like help, if at all possible.
Right, right. To
Yeah,
just be better.
be better. Yeah, yeah, be fucking better. Yeah, okay. Is there any one vision of a landmark, nature wise, that if you were to just see that for the rest of the time and no more, what one landmark or type of landmark would you look at out the window for every day left?
A waterfall on the side of a mountain.
Mm, yeah, dreamy. Okay.
Yes.
My last question is going to be: what words of wisdom would you pass on to someone as why they should travel? And secondly, if they're kind of stuck and are thinking about it, you know, what advice would you give for them to, you know, try and make that leap and go and travel, or at least change their lifestyle to incorporate more travel? What would you say?
Travel is such a beautiful way to experience other cultures and learn not only more about the world around you, but learn about yourself. Because you start to see all the ways that people are different. The world is different than what you grew up in, especially if you've been in one spot for your entire life or most of your life. If you're stuck in trying to find that excuse to travel, here's your excuse. Just do it because life is way too short. Like I mentioned earlier, my brother-in-law passed in 2020. He was only a year older than me at the time. Um, in his late 20s, and life can change at any second, and anything can happen to you. So why not enjoy it to the fullest while you're here? Make sure that you're taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Yeah, thanks for that. It's very key for a lot of people who probably listen, who from all ranges of age, could be youngster, could be someone who's older than us, who have always thought about traveling and just maybe a bit stuck or need a bit of inspiration to get going. So that'll definitely help. And thanks for coming on, dude. It's been a real great chat. I've learned a lot about yourself, about your travels and your plans for the future. All exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to have been here, and look forward to hearing what your audience has to say. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, you know how to find me.
Cheers, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to my Winging It Travel podcast episode today. You can find me on Instagram at James Hammond Travel or Winging It Travel Podcast. You can search for both. I release weekly clips of this podcast episode, as well as photos from the last 8 to 10 years of my travels. You can also follow me on TikTok, Facebook and Pinterest by searching Winging It Travel Podcast. I do release daily content to do with travel and the podcast throughout the week. Also check out my website, jameshammond.org. There's content about myself, my travels, and there's also a newsletter sign up as well as a contact form. Finally, please rate and review the podcast on Podchaser. This is my platform of choice. Alternatively, you can rate this on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. This really helps the podcast gain a bit of traction for the future in terms of guests and content. And I'm glad to see that you guys are listening out there, reviewing it and enjoying the content so far. Stay safe, stay humble, keep listening, keep traveling, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers, James.